Commander Zethkar's mandibles clicked with satisfaction as he reviewed the combat assessment data streaming across his neural interface. The preliminary tests were complete, and the results confirmed what the Galactic Coalition had suspected about these primitive humans. Pathetic, he muttered, his forearms gesturing dismissively at the holographic displays. The human specimens had performed abysmally in the strength trials. Their bone density was laughably low, their muscle mass insufficient, and their reaction time sluggish compared to any respectable warrior species in the galaxy. The bridge of the Coalition dreadnought Inevitable Victory hummed with activity as officers from a dozen different species prepared for what would surely be a swift conquest. The Catharan heavy infantry, each standing 3 meters tall with exoskeletons that could crush steel, flexed their claws in anticipation. The Vextai shock troopers tested their plasma weapons, their scaled hides glistening under the ship's artificial lighting. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Kixna, her reptilian features twisted in what passed for amusement among her kind. The humans' maximum lifting capacity barely exceeds their own body weight. Their sprint speed is pathetic, and their combat reflexes are among the worst we've encountered. Zethkar's compound eyes gleamed. Earth hung before them like a blue-green jewel, completely unaware that its fate had already been decided by mathematics and biology. The Coalition's conquest algorithm had analyzed every aspect of human physiology and found them wanting. No species this week had ever successfully resisted the Coalition's expansion. "Begin the invasion," he commanded. "This will be over within a planetary rotation." The first wave of Coalition forces landed simultaneously across Earth's major continents. Their strategy was flawless, overwhelming force applied with surgical precision. Within hours, they had neutralized most military installations and established control over strategic locations. Captain Sarah Chen crouched behind the rubble of what had once been downtown Phoenix, her rifle feeling inadequate against the armored behemoths advancing down the street. The alien soldiers moved with mechanical efficiency, their massive forms barely registering the small arms fire that bounced harmlessly off their natural armor. "Fall back to secondary positions," she radioed to her scattered unit. They had been retreating for 3 days now, always one step ahead of complete annihilation. Every direct engagement had been a disaster. Humans simply couldn't match the aliens' raw physical capabilities. But Sarah had noticed something the invaders hadn't. They were slowing down. The Catharan heavy infantry that had seemed unstoppable on day one were now pausing frequently, their massive forms heaving with exertion. The Vextai shock troopers who had sprinted through the initial assault were now walking, their plasma weapons hanging loosely in their grip. "Chen," came a whispered transmission from Sergeant Martinez, positioned 2 blocks east. "They're taking another rest break, 4th one in the last hour." Sarah smiled grimly. The aliens had measured humanity's strength and found it lacking. But they had completely ignored something far more dangerous: human endurance. On the bridge of the Inevitable Victory, Commander Zethkar stared at the tactical displays with growing confusion. The invasion should have been complete by now. Instead, his ground forces were reporting increasingly sporadic progress. "Status report," he barked at Lieutenant Kixna. "Sir, our forces control approximately 60% of the major population centers, but..." She hesitated. "We're experiencing unexpected difficulties maintaining operational tempo." "Elaborate." "The humans keep running away. Our troops pursue, engage, and the humans retreat. This pattern has repeated hundreds of times. Our soldiers are reporting extreme fatigue, sir. They're requesting extended rest periods between engagements." Zethkar's mandibles clicked in irritation. "How long have our forces been in continuous operation?" 72 standard hours, sir." "And the humans?" "Intelligence suggests they've been active for the same duration. Some units appear to have been in constant motion since the invasion began." This made no sense. The humans were physically inferior in every measurable way. How were they maintaining activity levels that exhausted superior alien warriors? Dr. Elena Vasquez had been awake for 4 days straight, coordinating refugee movements through underground tunnel networks. Her body ached, her eyes burned, and She had survived on nothing but energy bars and water for the past 48 hours, yet she kept moving, because that's what humans did. Around her, the resistance network operated with quiet efficiency. Runners carried messages between cells, never stopping for more than a few minutes. Engineers worked around the clock to sabotage alien equipment. Medics treated wounded fighters who immediately returned to the field. None of them were particularly strong. Most couldn't run very fast or hit very hard, but they could keep going when their alien pursuers had collapsed from exhaustion. The Coalition had built their entire military doctrine around overwhelming force, short, decisive engagements that leveraged their superior strength and speed. They had never encountered a species that simply refused to quit. By the end of the first week, the situation had become untenable for the Coalition forces. Ketheran warriors designed for devastating charges were collapsing after pursuing human guerrillas through urban terrain for hours at a time. Vextai shock troops optimized for lightning assaults were falling asleep at their posts after days of continuous alert status. Commander Zethkar found himself facing something unprecedented in Coalition military history, a tactical stalemate against an apparently inferior opponent. "Sir," reported a exhausted Kixana, "casualty reports are unusual. We've sustained minimal combat losses, but 70% of our ground forces are combat ineffective due to exhaustion. Medical is reporting cases of severe fatigue-induced organ failure among the Ketheran units." Zethkar studied the tactical display, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. Red zones marked areas where Coalition forces had been forced to withdraw, not due to enemy strength, but because his soldiers literally couldn't continue fighting. "How are the humans still operational?" he demanded. "Unknown, sir. Our xenobiologists are requesting additional time to study human physiology. They believe we may have overlooked certain adaptive advantages." Saracen jogged through the pre-dawn darkness, her boots splashing through puddles of yesterday's rain. Behind her, a mixed group of civilians and soldiers maintained the same steady pace they had held for the past 6 hours. None of them were running fast, but all of them were still running. In the distance, she could see the alien compound they had been approaching all night. The massive structures were dark and silent, their occupants finally succumbing to the exhaustion that humans had learned to carry like an old friend. Her radio crackled with reports from cells across the globe. The same story everywhere. Alien forces retreating, consolidating, requesting reinforcements that were themselves too tired to deploy effectively. Humanity was winning a war not through superior firepower or tactical brilliance, but through the simple, stubborn refusal to stop moving. The aliens had measured strength and found humans wanting. They had never thought to measure the will to endure. 3 months later, the Coalition fleet departed Earth's orbit. The official records would state that the planet had been deemed strategically non-viable due to unusual environmental factors. Commander Zethkar never filed a report explaining how the galaxy's most advanced military force had been defeated by beings who could barely lift their own body weight. Some defeats, he had learned, were too embarrassing to document. On Earth, Saracen finally allowed herself a full night's sleep. She had earned it.